Welcome to the Human Longevity Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Peterson. Together, we're about to explore the science and solutions that will help you live better, longer. Today, we're talking all about living forever, the science, spirit, and strategies of super longevity with none other than global radical life extension expert himself, James Stroll. James has spent more than 5 decades as a visionary anti-death activist. James, we're going to talk all about that. As he's been out challenging death-oriented beliefs and practices while coaching thousands of people to live an ageless lifestyle. He's written countless books, appeared on television, and is best known as the co-founder and director of People Unlimited and the producer of RaadFest, the largest global event helping people interested in accessing unlimited lifespans. And today, James is here with us to talk all about how we can experience more aliveness. James, welcome.
Well, thank you. My pleasure being on your show, and thank you for that introduction. I started working with my partner, Bernadine Brown, and her associate, Charles Bob Brown, in 1972. And we were traveling all over the United States, speaking on the possibility of the potential for unlimited life.
That's tremendous. So I know you probably get asked this question a lot, but what was that initial impetus that kind of sparked this fire in you to go out and really start a conversation that absolutely was not on the radar at all at that time?
Well, okay, great. I get that asked a lot. You're right. But it's a great question, right? And so, I mean, I do want to comment. We're all looking for these kindred spirits, right? That we can really share this I'll say potential that I think is innate in us to actually live and conceive the concept, first of all, of being able to have unlimited lifespans. It's always been in the human body, that desire, because it's innate in us, and there's a true desire in our bodies to really live, and to really live, we have to live outside the boundaries of aging and death. That's what total life is. That's my description of what total life is really about. But I started, actually, interesting enough, when I was 11 years old. My grandmother passed away, and I saw her deteriorate. And she was very close to her. She was a mentor of mine, always there for me. My experience then was like the sweetest woman on the planet. And I saw her deteriorate and pass away. And it was painful for me. It was my first experience with losing somebody that I was close to. And so I said to my mother said, well, when do I get to see grandmother again? And she said, well, when you die and go to heaven. I mean, we were in, that time in a religious, and I thought, oh, that didn't sound good to me as an 11-year-old that I have to die to see my grandmother. So I said, it popped out of me. I said, why can't we have heaven here on earth? Why can't we not die and create heaven here on earth? My mother was like, oh, well, that's a good thought. Thankfully, I had a mother that was, progressive and was a seeker herself. And so she said, oh, that's a good thought. Why don't you pursue that? And so after that, it was an imprint on me. And interesting enough, I shared the same story with Dr. Bell Andrews, who's the owner of Sierra Sciences, who's a great telomere scientist of this world. And he said he had the same experience at around 11 or 12 himself, where his dad told him he was actually wanted to study the space, and that's what he was mostly interested in, the science of the universe. But then his dad said to him, no, why don't you go and cure aging?
Wow. That's so,
yeah. And his dad, because his dad was really a guy filled with life, and so Bill said, oh, I said that struck him, in his own being, like, oh, wow, he felt that. So he had that same experience. He and I are really close on that level. We have a, fantastic communication and kindred spirits on that level because of that experience. And so, but after that experience, I just kept pursuing. It was in my blood, you might say. And everywhere I'd go, I would look for somebody who I could share that concept with. Even when I was in grade school, I was writing themes about it to the, and my teachers would come to me, and I have this one particular teacher who was fantastic. I remember his name now, Mr. Newcomer. He came to me and said, oh, I'm really moved by the things you're writing, And so he actually contacted my parents and, told them that, oh, this kid is writing this student is writing these amazing themes about life, and he says he needs to be nurtured in this. So this teacher was very nurtured, and my parents, were made aware of that. And so after that, my mother took me everywhere that there was a speaker on life on any level that would come in town. And those days, it was like maybe it would be an evangelist speaking about, eternal life in some level, or it'd be a speaker talking about, integral yoga those days, or it'd be somebody that's talking about, the possibility of, expanding lives. Anything she'd find in town, she'd take, or the surrounding towns, she'd take me to. And so she nurtured that, that in me. And so yeah,
please.
that's what
So
happened.
I have so many questions because I am so enjoying. Thank you for sharing that. There's two interesting things. So I'm going to just say this, that I have a definitive moment where I was around 10. And so it's interesting, these timestamps, that what came to me, and I literally just did an interview yesterday, and I got asked the question much like you, right? And I'm like, they're like, what qualifies you to do all the things you're doing in longevity? And like, where did this begin for you? I said, I just have this clear memory of being 10 years old, being in a room. So again, as we were talking before the interview started, I'm of Italian descent. And I've got some European from my mother's side, but my Italian genes run very strong. And so I'm with my family of the Italian side, and I've got in multi generations, all it's a Sunday dinner, having sauce and sitting around, and they're playing cards and they're smoking cigarettes and they're drinking booze, but they're like the best time. And they are just filled with just so much aliveness, right? A lot of life, a lot of just energy. And I just remember being a kid and looking at them and going, I am not going to have any problems aging. I am going to age so well. I'm going to live so long because I have the best genes. I don't even know where I ever heard about genes at 10 years old, and to the irony of I do so much with epigenetics. So it was just I'm like, and then as life went on, different moments in the story, but there was that first moment of awareness of just going like, oh, I am fearless. I just want to soak in and enjoy the aliveness. Like, let's do this thing because there's pure potential ahead. So I appreciate that it was 11 for you, 12. Like there's something around that timestamp when we start to have
Yeah,
greater states of interoception of what matters for us, right? And our belief system starting to really show up.
yeah.
So I want to fast forward. We're gonna go forward and I want to go back. But first I want to go to fast forward. Now it's 1972 and you are taking up this helm and you're going out and you're really sharing this new vision of what is possible. It's been developed and supported in you by what an amazing mother. How beautiful. And what was that early adoption like? Like I'm curious about just how was the message received then versus now? Same, similar, different? I'd love your perception on the receptivity of the message over the span.
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, so at that time, of course, no one was even speaking longevity. Okay,
Right.
we were out speaking immortality, and unlimited lifespans. Okay, so but interesting enough, the network we had at that time, mainly because our associate Charles Brown, amazing human being, he had come from a very religious background,
Mhm.
and he had been a minister himself, and then he moved forward into this arena, so the network he had were a lot of religious people, and some of them, had moved out from the church and were looking for more answers for their life. And so our network we traveled in was those kind of people. We would travel through different, through the South, through the Midwest. One shortly after I started working with them, I think it was 1974. We traveled throughout the entire United States, and most of these people were at one time or another they were thinking of eternal life in the sense of dying and their spirit moving on, going to heaven. So when we
Yeah.
started introducing the idea that not dying, but being able to regenerate the body, find ways to do that, have eternal life, it wasn't that big of a jump for them. Interesting enough.
Mm-hmm.
because it already had in them, and really most people do, okay, this innate feeling about, eternal life at some level. I
Yeah.
mean, for the most part, I've experienced that, people want to live, all right, but because they feel they can't, they don't think it's possible to actually, maintain the human body. Many times they will create imaginary immortality, as I call it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they'll create a legacy of immortality around, say, money, for
Yeah.
example, or a similar legacy that they're not forgotten, that they feel like, that this is one reason we have children, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
have many times, and we keep wanting families because we want to have somebody have a memory of us or imprint of us in their bodies, that when we would pass, that we're not just completely forgotten, So
Yeah.
we create, and I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but we create, afterlives and everything because we want to live. So when we
Yeah.
started just about unlimited life, we had to make a transition there. We said, hey, we think that it's possible to live in the human body. That's what we're really meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Bill Andrews calls death a fluke, an evolutionary fluke.
Hmm.
Okay. He just mentioned this recently. And that fluke that he's working, and other scientists and doctors in this field are working to find out what that fluke is and to fix it.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, Dr. Bill Andrews, his idea, as you know, is to lengthen the telomeres through gene therapy, and then we'll reverse aging. Aubrey de Grey, his idea is to, like, we're like these classic cars that you keep repairing bit by bit, and pretty soon you have a body that's constantly in repair, and then you reach what's called the longevity escape velocity,
Yes.
where you're aging faster than you're aging. So
Correct.
so that's the response we got for the most part. And interesting enough, we had a pretty huge response.
Mm-hmm.
People, for the most part. I mean, there was always the skeptics, of course, and when
Yeah.
we were being in a lot of TV shows, Larry King Live, you know, Larry King, it was interesting. He told us, I want to live. I hope you guys are right. He said this right on the air, and he
Yeah.
had he had the head of the a big church in the United States be our nemesis at that time on the show. I'm trying to think of his name now. You know him right off, but I've just slipped my mind who he was. Anyway, this guy was running through the scriptures all the time, trying to find reasons that we have to die while we're talking.
Interesting. Well, I'm curious about this. So, again, because I love that. Okay. And we're going to kind of tie in. You are this anti-death advocate. So,
Yeah.
this is, again, just a more philosophical. We're just having a really interesting conversation. Do you believe, do you perceive that there is a benefit to death in the physical body as we know it? If there was any reason for it, it's a fluke as it's being postulated, but could there be a benefit to it? I hope you're enjoying today's episode. And to continue to get the most out of your own personal longevity adventure, be sure to go over to humanlongevity.com/podcast. You'll see our gift section. Now, inside of there, be sure to grab my favorite 7-day age reversal guide and mini course. humanlongevity.com/podcast. Now, let's get back to today's episode.
I don't see any benefit now that I use the term have, awakened to where I'm at now. In fact, obviously, we try to create benefits because it's, for most people, it feels inevitable, and so we try to make it more palatable. So we try to find benefits. I mean, somebody told me the other day. They said, "Oh, we have to fertilize the plants and everything on the planet. That's why death is there." Well, okay. I mean, there's plenty of fertilization, all right, without the human bodies having to contribute to that, and I think we were really meant to live. I think it's innately in us. I think there's a longevity lineage, you might say, in us that I will be speaking about more, even at RaadFest. I spoke about it some of the last RaadFest. It's been, the science has proven to us that there's the immortal germ line, that exist, and it's all connected in that. But why is it that we, through history, have always wanted to, the pharaohs wanted to be immortality, Every
Right.
human being, I mean, there's something innately there, but we've never been able to achieve it. Okay. But that doesn't mean we won't. We didn't fly
Yeah.
till we flew, right?
Right.
Or
Right. Right.
mile wasn't broken until it was broken. So people will say, oh, they'll tell me, oh, if it was possible, we wouldn't die now. Well, that's not, look, I mean, we crashed many times when we were trying to fly, you know,
Yeah.
crashed going to the moon, but we made it finally. And I'm saying by a collective effort, we can do this and it's real. No, I don't see any value that I can say that's to death. In fact, too often we trivialize the pain and suffering that people go through uh,
Mm.
and the death process by
Mm.
trying to make it look beautiful. And it's not beautiful. If you go down any hospital corridor where there's terminal diseases, you don't see anything beautiful there.
Yeah.
Okay. You know that.
Yeah.
But again, we try to make it something that is not. And I understand that. I'm
Mm.
not critical of that because we have to find some comfort, right? Yeah,
Right.
and we don't think something's possible. But that doesn't mean that we should ignore that the real beautiful life we need to have is unending vitality and strength in our bodies that can just grow and grow exponentially. And this will take us out of what I call the survival era into the creative era of human beings, where we're not destroying ourselves and one another, but we're beginning to find creative ways to build each other, to live without pain, to live without killing each other, and really value each other like we never had before.
So there's something interesting. I literally just had a conversation about a week ago with a wonderful human who's a liaison to some royal families and some of the sheiks and wealth over in Dubai. And there was something really fascinating in this conversation that as we were talking about really kind of this new narrative, really what is needed in the world? Where are we at? Where have we been? Where is it that we want to go? Where are we at? And how is it that there can be, right? We can access greater potential and possibility. Well, it's what's the stories we're telling ourselves, and then how are we reinforcing those? And what came up was that what he shared with me that I hadn't taken the time to appreciate. And as I say it now, it seems so obvious. But he said, Melissa, this is a very young country that's got exorbitant, unlimited amounts of wealth. So it's not wealth that's moving this populace. They are driven by wanting to have the best education, healthcare, resources, because they have been discriminated against. There's been great, and they don't, it's not about making money. They understand that power, the passion, the potential, the aliveness comes with how do we show up fully for life. And here's what I thought was interesting. I got to thinking about it. I'm like, if we look at Western culture and how things evolved, really any kind of westernized society evolved as a slave culture, meaning like there was fear, punishment, lack, limitation, some really in control, everybody else. And so this mentality of we got to keep you down, you're limited, you don't dare think outside of your box. Don't you dare do it because you're going to get beat, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get like there was always such severe punishment that has literally been infused into from a transgenerational epigenetic that imprint that's an important word still is encoded literally in the DNA, especially in westernized
Right,
society.
right.
And I just was like, this is such an amazing, if you really think about it, like wait a minute, here's here's a culture that isn't trying to harm and hurt and punish and tear people down, but in essence say, how do we keep building and building and building ourselves up? And I love that you're talking about going into this creative era because it truly is not just think different thoughts, right? But then what are we doing to actually curate? So imagine, design, cultivate, curate, experience an enhanced way of being human, of living, of expressing heaven on earth. And I'm curious over the years, as you have refined this, since that was kind of your first aha with your grandmother's passing, what is that vision that propels you forward? So I was thinking, seeing it going into creativity, thinking heaven on earth, what do you believe is actually possible for humanity at this time and moving forward?
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's great. So, what I think is possible and is happening is we're taking ourselves, like I say, into the era of creativity. Now, Ray Kurzweil's new book, Singularity is Nearer. I don't know
Mhm.
if you've been reading any of that yet, but it's his new book that he talks about. He was talking about his first book was Singularity is Near, okay? And now Singularity is Nearer. So, singularity is about us as human beings being able to have a combining a unison, what's the word, evolving together with AI, you
Yeah.
know, and to where we're using the power of AI and the human body to live, unlimited lifespans and many different with many. The aspect of it is very broad. Okay, everything from being
Mhm.
uploaded in the cloud to using nanotechnology, et cetera, et cetera. And but so that's part of that. He says in 2030, which is what, only 6 years away, that era will begin. All right, it's moving exponentially so fast. So, but I see that we are in the era of creativity already now. Those of us who are experiencing this, the vastness, the concept innately of this new life.
Yeah.
Uh, for me personally, a lot of the old anxieties and traumas of what I was born into have I feel them like passing away in a
Yeah.
way, a person, to where I can see and feel my own person, this era of creativity, to where we are, see, as human beings and born into this mortal world, I'll use that term, this mortal program, we've been very traumatized.
Yep.
We've we found ways, coping mechanisms. We're very good at finding coping mechanisms, right? You know, living, adapting and living through things, and sometimes covering them up many
Yeah.
times. And so, but that trauma is still there. And so, by this era of creativity that we begin to get out, because that's what really why I'm so excited about the possibility of unlimited lifespans, not just the possibility, reality of it, okay? Because it's going to happen. The question is, what are we going to do? How fast are we as human beings going to allow or support it to happen? So but moving into that era, we're going to find a movement within ourselves that we're to be taken out of that trauma and the memory of that. And there's a potential within us, consequently, that we've never even tapped into, a power within us of creation and divinity that we don't even know the depth of it yet, because we're just kind of touching the tip of it. But it's there for us to have. It's been so suppressed by that program of death. So that's what I'm
Mhm.
excited about. Yes, am I excited also to be able to travel into the universe? Travel start, all that, what people talk about, why they want to live. But wow, to think that we have in us
Yeah.
this creative power that we've never really even tapped into because of this trauma and this program of death that has suppressed it. Like you said, the horror thing that we've had to go through of the condemnation for having new thoughts or new ideas in our
Yeah.
culture, and even today we still face that. But there's people who are breaking through, and those who are
Mhm.
breaking through are experiencing the divinity of this and a new view on what the world can be and is right now. So that's what I'm really thrilled about.
I appreciate that. So there's a couple of interesting things here that I want us to explore around this concept of AI, because on the one hand, I want to, so just verbal processor, that's me. I want to put a few things out that we're going to play with here. So if we think about Ray Kurzweil and the singularity and kind of this merging with AI, I want to explore with you, because my personal experience thus far is I believe that so many of us don't even know what it is to be human yet. We continue to numb, we continue to shut down, we continue to disassociate, we continue to unplug, so to speak, from what is that divinity, as you're talking about, that is within. And so, on the one hand, what we're already seeing some early adopters move to is already living with the algorithm, so to speak. And so kind of already going to like really rely on that tech piece. And there is something really interesting about it. Yet, at what point do we give away our sovereignty into something beyond us thinking it's going to help us live better, but do we even know what it means to live? We need to explore that, and I know you're big with that. And then but I do believe that there is this really interesting place, because as you talk about, we're going into this era of creativity. Everybody's got an opinion right now on AI. And one of the things I've talked about, and I had an amazing conversation with a big advocate of AI, is that I think I love AI. I love using my AI tools for it. It speeds so much up for me. And if you know how to work with it, so just in a workflow, right? So when I think of it, using it it's like I talk to it like it's my personal assistant, So I'll utilize it in ways that create so much efficiency for me, that gives me back so much more time and energy, that then enables me to have more pockets to be with my creativity, to be with my divinity, to be with not the mundane things. So many of us have equated busyness to value, to self-worth, to importance, to a paycheck. That's not where any of it is. That's not where aliveness is, right? And so the things that really fuel our soul and help us to enjoy life isn't necessarily in the busy tasks that are pretty mundane, that AI can swoop in and handle like that. So I think there's an opportunity that, to the extent that we're willing to collaborate with, work with, whether we want to or not, it's here, it's not going to go away, right? But learning how to use it with us and for us can actually give us that opportunity to do exactly what you're saying, move into this era of creativity. And yet, from your perspective, is there a line, a tipping point, that if we go too far with it, do we actually truly lose our humanity, the divinity? Because is it the divinity aliveness from within this vessel? Because then we're actually going outside of ourselves in a way, like we're using a tool to go out to try to come in. Am I making sense?
Oh yeah,
That-
very good point. No, I agree with you. I mean, in a sense, I to capsulize that, I would say that you're saying the concern of losing our humanness, right?
yeah,
To to AI, fundamentally a machine, and
yeah,
and the concern can be definitely real. At the same time, I'm with you on that in the context that as I like my humanness, you
yeah,
know. And I've always thought from the time I had this, feeling of living that, I didn't want a machine to take it over. I didn't want to. I've always been careful through my life, even what I do, as far as what I put in me.
mhm,
Even I feel blessed that when I was in high school and college, that a lot of my friends were losing themselves in drugs and so forth. And I didn't want to take anything like that. Not that I did experiment with it with some marijuana and so forth, but I was always concerned that I would, take away the spirit of I'll say immortality that I had in my body. I,
mhm,
I would dim it. I would dim that spirit. And
yeah,
of course now we've seen that happen with drugs.
yeah,
It's happen
yeah,
with many. Same thing with AI constantly that could happen. But I think we as human beings, and there's those human beings that feel this way, that there's a spirit of I'll use that term, a spirit of immortality, a spirit of life that cannot be taken away by a machine, that we will not, and a machine can't have it. I'll use that term. A
yeah,
machine can't duplicate that. It can do all they think
correct.
they need as a tool. But I think when we have that awakening of that spirit in our bodies, and that's what's so important. Why I'm even expressing some of these things I'm expressing of the immortal
Mhm,
lineage to people, that we
mhm,
don't, in our endeavors to live longer, become like machines or robots. That we're not just creating a world that we can turn around and destroy each other again in. Wouldn't it be
yeah,
terrible to, have the potential to live another 500 years and yet have to fear constantly through that time being destroyed, constantly
yeah,
through time? We don't want that kind of life. So there's got to be a spirit here of life that well, it's already there in our bodies, that we adhere to, that we recognize and we surrender to. I'll use that term, and nothing could take that away. You know, I mean, I experienced this through my life, that by my holding that dear in my body, that I had the strength to go through different things without losing that I'll say spirit of life that's there in my body, that nothing could take that away. But we're going to have to be alert to that point, right? I mean, And I think that's what we're doing as human beings too. Many of us are alerting each other that, yes, we want all these advancements. People said they were worried about, right? The car being invented. We lose ourselves. We'd be going too fast.
Yeah.
We would be, with the horse and buggy, we're fast enough.
Right. Right.
Every
It's
advance
so
we
true. It's like
have,
television, radio, and then television. It is an
and there's some
interesting.
people, yeah, and there's some people
Yeah.
stay back in the old era, right? They didn't want to, they didn't advance because they were afraid of that, and it was to them it was non-godly or whatever. And
Yeah.
but I always looked like, hey, and there's a power in the universe. He gave us all these things then to explore and to rightly divide how to use them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that. So if we look at what's happening with People Unlimited and RaadFest, how are your organizations helping to facilitate this? Because what I'm hearing is that, you know, there is a radical shift that is being invited. What's the way to say it? Like it just takes a whole different mindset. So because of conditioning, because of historical, because of programming, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of limitation, just even to get people to think differently about like, well, man, if I could live 10 extra years with not being sick, what would I want to do? The idea of even 20 extra years versus 200, 500, 1,000, eternity. Right now, the current mindset, because it is reinforced, right? So if we go to narrative, like there's the good and the bad, the right, the wrong, all the polarities, but there's a constant narrative that's kind of at odds to keep things in place, because this is how things operate, this is where the money's made, this is how it goes. So what you're proposing, if we think about the shift that is happening, it is happening. Depending on how fast or slow depends on really us. Kind of like going from horse and buggy to car, it does require a new conversation, a new narrative, and not just talking about it, thinking about it, but then. So if I go back to my Dubai story, the whole point of that is going, this is actually a government, right, that's looking from a top-down approach to say, we want to build an entirely different way of how this population can be and can experience a more greater state of heaven on earth, so to speak, something different than what has been. So, what are you doing through your initiatives to truly help bring a new narrative, a new way of not just thinking, but like grounding this in to application that we could actually start to live differently, and we can think differently, and we can actually extend lifespan and health span and mortality into these states of immortality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's great question, and great. I loved your expression on that. Well, what I'm doing, and what I'm encouraging my team to do for the most part, is to offer these new ideas in a bold way. And we created RaadFest for the purpose of establishing a platform that these great scientists and doctors and like yourself could come and share their most advanced protocols and get support in it and not feel like they have to be self-conscious or suppressed about. I wanted to have this place they could speak freely in, and I've had
Mhm.
so many of them come to me and say, "Oh wow, thank you. You brought like new life back in me, a new courage, because now I feel like I have a place where I can come and really expand with, and now it's boosted their career even. So that was a real joy for me, because that's what I wanted to create, and so, but at the same time, we don't push anything on anybody, because like you said, there's mindsets. Look, these programs, people have been told things and seen it for thousands of years. It's a very deep embedded programs, right? You can come with a new program, and say, "Oh, you should believe this," all right? But that's not. I've never found that constructive. That's more. So what we
Right.
do is we lay out. You might want to say we lay out a feast. Okay, we're not forcing
Mhm.
anybody to do anything. Here's what you can do. You know, I think you have the potential to live an unlimited lifespan. But if you just want to live 10 more years with quality, choose what you want. Choose from the table what you want to eat and partake in.
I
and
love it.
really it gives an opportunity for people then to, come to the table, pick out a few things they might want, but they see the feast there, right?
Yeah.
They see all the beautiful things laid out. And then it stirs their curiosity. And then I see it grow from there. And I've seen
Yeah.
this again and again and again. But they have to have that desire in their own bodies. For a long time, a confession. When I first started in 72, I was going to force everything down everybody's throat.
Get it?
I felt so passionately about it, I
Right,
felt
of
so
course.
strong about it. You take this or else,
Yes,
you
yes.
know. And so for the most part, that was a hard work. Okay, that was hard.
Yes.
And for the most part, it stressed me out, stressed them out. They felt my sincerity, and most of these people, would appreciate me at some level, but still, it wasn't productive. Okay, so and that was the whole idea of RaadFest. Set up the table.
Hmm.
Let people come. Don't judge anybody where they're at or where they're not at. What they believe in, what they
Yeah.
believe in. Welcome everybody and let them partake of what they feel.
I so appreciate your heart. I really do. I really want to thank you for just sharing it because that's so important. I literally, so at the Human Longevity Institute, we train practitioners around the globe in precision longevity, health optimization, and how to not only deliver care differently, but begin to think differently and have a different conversation that's moving them as well as their patients and clients beyond a sick care mentality. Because the current model just really kind of keeps us steeped in that limitation, sickness. There's not a lot of life here. There's not a lot of fun. So for, we get to, as healthcare providers, start to change that trajectory and how we educate and how we move people along. And we were literally just having a class. I was teaching them about their business model and language. And this one doctor was saying, I'm just like, tell me, she was like, I'm getting stuck. And she was telling me where she was getting stuck at a certain point. She's like, I just want to give them, I believe in transformation. I believe in empowering people. And I'm giving them all this information and then I just get stuck. And I said, what do you get out of giving people information? And she talks to me about it. And I said, have you ever had a transformation? And she said, yes. I said, what happened when you had a transformation? She's like, well, it was actually during the consultation. And I'm like, okay. I said, and what happened? She said, my beliefs were affirmed. And I said, so does that mean you were heard? She said, yes. I said, so did that transformation happen because you were given information? Because somebody told you what to do? She goes, no. I said, because I was heard. It's like,
Right.
yes. So, meaning like we, especially as providers, people out there kind of advocating, we think we're supposed to know the answers, tell people, do this, don't do this. And so, by telling you, thank you for sharing your heart, I so appreciate that the intention, kind of the energy behind the energy that's moving that entire festival and anything that's happening there is really about let's meet people where they're at. That's what I teach my docs and coaches all the time. Meet people where they're at without judgment. It's not, well, here's what you should do. Here's what you could do. It's not me projecting myself on you. What is it that's important to you? What
Exactly.
is it that you desire?
That's
What
right.
do you want? And just by inviting people to into a container, into a conversation, even listening to a conversation like this, to know it's safe and okay to just ask themselves, what do I want? Do I believe that immortality could be a thing? Do I feel really triggered by that and I want to shut down? What if I could live 10 more years differently than my parents, right? So it's like nothing serious is going on here. It's all beautiful. It all has a place. And I think if we can all give ourselves a little grace to appreciate, it does come down to what's the human experience right now?
Yeah.
Because there isn't an immortal timeline if there isn't a right now. This is immortality right here, right now, if we're willing to come be present for
Right.
ourselves and others. So, thank you for the
Yeah.
festival.
Yeah.
Um, gosh, you got me like all in the feels right now, James. I'm like, oh man. I get
That's
to hear all that. I'm just like, oh, I didn't realize that. I love that so much. I love it so much.
yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
So let's talk about the future, right?
Yeah.
So again, you're on a mission, you share this beautiful space, you bring in these incredible leaders. You said something important about you want bold. I like that. That there's something about that really feels important that's been part of your mission for a long time. So what do you see boldly coming online that you're most excited about, whether it's the new tech? I know you mentioned AI, there's a lot of regenerative, kind of therapies, technologies coming down the road. There's there's all sorts of new information. So what excites you the most, having been in this for the span that you have, that you're feeling really hopeful about? I hope you're enjoying today's episode. And to continue to get the most out of your own personal longevity adventure, be sure to go over to humanlongevity.com/podcast. You'll see our gift section. Now, inside of there, be sure to grab my favorite 7-day age reversal guide and mini course. humanlongevity.com/podcast. Now let's get back to today's episode.
Wow. Yeah. There's a lot, but I would say, I mean, I'm really grateful for so many of the doctors and scientists that not only are speaking at RaadFest, but around the world that are doing, so much, great research and development, and in this field. Does it need to be more supported? Absolutely. I mean, if we were to put just a small fraction of the money, for example, we put in defense into super longevity, we would be way ahead of where we are now. But I'm grateful for these guys who just keep going.
Yeah.
Sometimes low budgets and whatever, like Dr. Bill Andrews, for example, I was speaking of. I'm very excited about his gene therapy he has, because I've seen the data on it and the research. And I talked to other scientists regarding it who are very expert in that field themselves, and they say, he's the real deal, and
Yeah.
what he's got is the real deal. But I'd like to see him get the funding to get the proof of concept. But a gene therapy, of his kind, for example, could change the world like that, because he said recently that if he had the funding, which he's close to getting, but it's always, so marginal, that he could get the proof of concept, and within, 1 to 3 years, have it to where he would have this formula in a pill form, okay, that would cost less than $1 to produce. And whether you'd have to take it, they don't, the science is still all out on that, whether it had to be taken monthly or one time a year. Could reverse the aging potentially if it worked like 100%. Okay.
Right.
You could be 90, for example, and chronologically, and 25 biologically. Now that is mind blowing, right?
Yes.
That's really, in essence, it for some people it might seem so, like hard to grasp, or maybe even hard to spiritually or emotionally conceive. But that's so beautiful if you can really see it, because you work all your life, people do, and they get in their 80s and 90s, and they have all this wisdom, knowledge, and investment in life, and love around them, and then they have to face deterioration, and then to have a gene therapy that could be 90 years old, and then all of a sudden be biologically 25 and be back with a vital body. And not have to, and how much wisdom have we lost? How much knowledge? Just not counting the human being himself, which we sometimes discount. Okay, that if Einstein, so many of these bodies could have been alive today, where they could have helped bring us where we've been totally different as human beings, because the reality is, as you know, we've evolved technologically a lot, but as human beings, we haven't evolved where we need to evolve. Okay, it's been slow. Okay.
Correct.
And part of this is because the biggest part is because of death, and what we face in that, and the loss that we face of knowledge, and not only the knowledge, the inspiration, the potency of that person. So I'm excited about, say this gene therapy probably is my number one. Also, there's others doing these gene therapies.
Mm-hmm.
BioViva, Liz Parrish,
Mm-hmm.
Minicircle now has got a very reasonably priced gene therapy that you can get. Actually, it's a lower dose, but for $20,000 you can get one that builds your muscle new,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we help you right. And these are the kind of things we need. We need not just, look, it's great that we take care of our basic health. That's important, but we need some leaps. We need
Yeah.
some expansive innovations which are there and just need to be cultivated to take us where we need to be as human beings. Again, to take us out of this era of survival and,
Correct.
and loss. And when we do that, what some people don't get totally, they'll ask, what's the value of creating an extensive life? We create a value of human life that's never been, because we're not
Yes.
just here for 80 years. We can be here for 160, 200, 300. We've increased the value of human life. And when you increase the value of human life, you increase the quality, and we're not as apt to or inclined to destroy ourselves and one another, because we've totally increased the value. So
Yes. 100%. And it's interesting. I often cite the study that was the postulate study that was done by Sinclair and his team on just looking at, is there the cost of sick care versus is there value right? Is there a gain in longevity? And so looking at that difference between lifespan, health span, and what happens when right now, on average, right, we've got $3.8 trillion that is spent annually on managing sick care. And so could there be, which is about almost 20% of the gross national debt. And so many people get so focused on, oh my God, our system, our healthcare is going to bankrupt. It's like we're living longer but sicker, and we have a lower population coming in, so we're going to have this, again, very referred to as that silver tsunami, that tipping effect, that this is going to be a economic catastrophe because we only see sickness. We've placed value on sickness because that's what drives a revenue stream. And so what they postulated was say, well, could there be value, right? And so what they found through their assessment, I'm sure you're familiar with this, is that if you can extend health span by 1 year, just one extra year without sickness, disease, that you can infuse 38 trillion. So we went from 3.8 trillion debt to infuse 38 trillion of value of economic gain by extending health span by 1 year across the population. And so that's why I tell people, I'm like, longevity is here to stay, because what we understand is there is actually gain. And so what I feel so excited about is that I see the tide turning of going, wait, there's value in health. There's value in aliveness. There's value in like actually valuing life versus managing problems and sickness. And so,
so much
you
more,
know,
so much more.
yeah, so much more. And yet fundamentally we do come back to, so, we all get to do our own inner work and our own self-assessment to say, what do I want? What does being more alive, if I could have it, what would that even mean to me? Because back to your point, and this is kind of the fundamental thing that I think we all get to look at, and you've said it on other interviews also, is that there's an extreme fear of aliveness. And
Yes.
so talk to me for a moment about how would you potentially, what would you offer to somebody to help them feel safe with aliveness versus fearful, but to move kind of in this direction of going like, I want to be more alive? What would you offer them?
I'd offer them, a community that does not put down aliveness. I mean, look, that's the biggest factor we've all faced. This is why people say that one of the biggest fears is public speaking, right? Because because the criticism you get from the crowd,
Sure.
or why we suppress ourselves is mostly public opinion. But to have people around you, and that's also the atmosphere we've moved to create at RaadFest. We write this into our speakers agreement. If you, I'm sure you've read that, not to. It's one thing to have healthy debate. It's another thing not to criticize
Yeah.
another person on stage, and consequently, we've never had that from the time we started in 2016. Any issues like that, maybe one slight times, because it's human nature sometimes, but we've been real strong about that. And I talk about that, that we're not each other's enemies. Our enemy is aging and death, and we should be fighting that together. And to have a good, debate is one thing, but then to actually, have a toxic critical mind towards each other, which comes out of this insecurity and this fear that's embedded with us in that death program, is destructive to the flow. And that's why people are afraid to feel totally alive, and to all of a sudden maybe be in a room and a big room and break out dancing, right? This is the funny part. So when we started in 2016, the first RaadFest, okay, we encouraged all the scientists to get up and stance, all right? It was so funny. No one was used to it. People looked at me like, what are you doing? Science events don't do that. Well, I already had the scientists, many of them tell me, don't create another boring science event, all right? So we said, we're going to create like Woodstock for radical life extension, something fastly fun. So we got these scientists to get up, music in the room, or dancing. Some of them wouldn't do it yet, but then some of the key ones did, like Greg Fahey, Bill Andrews got up, dancing, to some of the music but see, wow, this is the freedom we need to feel at any given time, to have a burst of joy and not be self-conscious about what's around us in it. But it takes having people, look, it's very difficult. If you go into a room and everybody's real tight in there and critical, it's very difficult to, say, just be yourself sometimes.
Sure.
And just be, have a burst of joy or get up on a chair and dance or say what you feel. But you're surrounded with people who, encourage that. And of course, there's always outliers. There's people who, but even there, in those people, sometimes they're trying to force something in the midst of an environment that's not always conducive to it, right?
Right.
So that's why I want to offer people. That's what RaadFest is about. That's what People Unlimited is about here. Let's create that world together, that we're not judging each other in our movements like that we can encourage aliveness, and that's where the real freedom is going to come from.
I love it. And I know I only get you for a few more minutes, and I want to honor your time. I want to bring up one thing that I'm going to offer to you for consideration. I would love your feedback. So I'm with you completely, and I'm so intentional about language because, again, it's creating, right? Language is so creative. And I wonder if we're fighting against death. Isn't fighting itself a resistance versus a flow? Isn't fighting a push back versus like, we can focus on fighting death, or we can focus on creating and curating aliveness. So, right, different energies. And so when I hear that statement, I'm not in judgment. I think this is really interesting because there's this part of this movement that we get riled up, but is curious, this is a question I'm asking you, is fighting against death still the same energy of, like, we're fighting and it's a limitation and it's that trauma cycle, versus is there another way that we all get to invite ourselves to go, yep, that's the old way. That is how we did it. And that's where it started. And thankfully that we did. And yet, really what we want to do, we're fighting death because we actually really want to curate aliveness. So what if we just open into aliveness and facilitate that conversation again and again and again and again, which you're doing, you're an advocate of, but I wonder for you, your thoughts on phrasing fighting against versus, whatever, opening into, like, exploring aliveness versus fighting death.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, and I agree with you. A few years back, I would have fought you on that. Now I'll say that, look, I use that term. I use that because that's how I opened RaadFest in 2016 to end any fight with each other. I said we shouldn't be in the world fighting each other. That our enemy is not each other, and this is the reality. Okay, it's more of a statement than it is now. For me, particularly in the last few years, I mean, I agree with you 100%. We have to stay focused on not looking at the troubled waters. I use that term, and glorifying this life. That doesn't mean we're numb to the things that are going around and can't look at them. And sometimes we discuss difficult things, and people are limited. Sometimes you face difficult things and you can discuss them. and not try to avoid them either, because it's not just about positive thinking. It's
Correct.
it's like was said, Jesus said, if you're pure in heart, all things are made pure. So
Yeah.
so so you can express, everything. There's a freedom of expression in that, right? Because you don't have to worry about even the words you use, because your heart's pure in it. And so
Yeah.
sometimes people don't understand, but that's part of freedom too. But
Yeah.
yes, I'm board with you that we need to accent. I'm done with fighting anybody.
Yeah.
Okay. I almost got in a fight with you then, but no, I'm teasing. But no, I'm done fighting anybody, because it's not it's energy spelled that isn't productive.
Yeah.
I'm out to find the camaraderie of our life, the flow that's there of that life force, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm out to find.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to fight, I let them fight, but I'm not fighting with them.
Right. Right. And you know what that reflects to me, James, is the evolution. So again, like life is an evolution and there are seasons of challenge, right?
Right.
And so if we look at the seasons and we think about winter and we think about time where it doesn't mean that there's death, but things are falling away, things are hibernating, they're closing down, and there's spring and there's summer, there's blooming, there's opening. So life is this beautiful process of expansion and contraction. So it's not a judgment of it. It's this opportunity of saying, I'm like to for you to recognize your own evolution. That's what we're all here to do. Like it's
100%.
not like let's double triple down and draw a line in the sand, because then that's the
Yeah.
very energy that puts things where they're at. And not to say where things are at is bad, but if this conversation is about immortality, if it is about, radical life extension and longevity and potential and possibility, then that is a forward, that is an expansive kind of state that we get to continue to be curious about evolving into, looking into versus always back. And I will say this last piece, I'm with you. It's not about toxic positivity. It's so important. The way
That's a
to
good
it
word.
is through it.
Positive positivity. I like that.
Yeah, the way to it is through it, right? So meaning like if I'm in a place where I want to believe that I can live to 150 or 550 or forever, I want to believe that, but I'm in a place that I think that that's BS. Okay? Like so I want to, but every part of me is like, yeah, that's stupid. There's no way that's going to happen. Then if we like meet ourselves in that energy and
Yeah,
just go, okay, well, right now I'm feeling really resistant to that. So I'm just going to be with it. I'm going to be in it. Man, that idea that more is possible, like something about that speaks to me. Meaning, instead of trying to resist ourselves always, whether the resistance is a fight or a right or a wrong, but to be in it and know that that's okay. Because
I
when
like
we're
that.
in it, right,
Mhm.
that allows us to just be with it, not close us down, move through it so that then we're moving into those next moments of potential opening and the resistance melting away. So I
Beautiful.
think it's beautiful. I love what you stand for. I love what you're out there doing. It's fascinating. And of course, you're just getting started. I look at you and we're going to close out with a couple of things. I have to say, because as soon as I've had the pleasure of meeting you in person, I'll be excited to be at RaadFest with you this season. You guys, RaadFest happens every September in Anaheim, California. At the time, depending on when you watch this particular or listen to this particular podcast, you may be before it or after it. We'll have links in the show notes of how you can get to the website, how you can get tickets. I am honored, James, that this year I am getting to partner. Human Longevity Institute is actually partnering up with RaadFest, and we are bringing the first ever season of the Women's Longevity Lab to be real specific to women
Perfect.
about kind of where they're at on their journey and how they enhance their longevity potential. So we're excited about that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're so happy to have you participating with this next level. Yeah, you put together a really beautiful program. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just thrilled. And so, we're going to be bringing more clips and more little snippets from actually at the event. You guys get your tickets find out, you can find out all about People Unlimited and just the different communities and, offerings that James and his team make available. Because I think the biggest thing that we get to remember, they're not here to force anything on us, but they're just offering up that smorgasbord that if you want to dip your toe in the water, you want a place where you can just be welcomed and be curious seekers and explorers, then RaadFest and People Unlimited is definitely the place to go. James, give me give us, gosh, you've given us so much today. One final little your longevity vision for humanity. So just 1 minute of closing out with all the work you're doing. I want you to go out. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go out, we'll go 20 years from now. 20 years from now, all the things you've been doing, everything that you've brought forward. What do you see? What do you see for humanity just 20 short years from now
Wow, wow,
from
thank you.
all that you're doing?
I first want to say real quick that thank you for this whole you put it very well, the smorgasbord that we're setting, and I want people to know that yeah, come and have the opportunity just to discover with us.
Yeah.
People Unlimited or RaadFest, yeah, it's a place of discovery that you can feel totally free and unjudged in.
Mm.
So that 20 years from now, wow. I mean, it's so hard to tell, right? Where in that context, where we're going to be because things are moving so fast and the future is such an unknown. And I think that's something you mentioned earlier about sometimes people can get afraid of the future. But you know what? It's great to have a future. And
Yeah.
uh, we really are in deep need in this world for a future that we don't have to worry about our future. And
Yeah.
that's what I see 20 years from now more than anything is an anxiety-free world.
Mm.
At least, at least, uh, at least a great percentage of it free, right? Of
Yeah.
anxiety. I can see an anxiety-free world that is not consumed, okay, by just that survival mechanism, and that where everybody has that opportunity in that to partake on whatever level they're feeling, but also to feel that they're not having to anymore struggle to food on the table.
Yeah.
Uh, because we can have wow, this has been proven in different instances that no one has to be starving. There's plenty of food, really. It's just lack of distribution and many other elements of the human nature now that has limited. But I want a world. I don't. I have a hard time going someplace and that's say a luxury hotel somewhere, and then outside that hotel is poverty. Okay, are people struggling? I don't think we're safe in our society as long as we have anybody struggling from that level. I see and feel a world, and that's part of what unlimited life is, because again, we're going to create that value more and more of everybody to where there's a system we create that no one has to worry about the next meal. Okay,
Yeah.
no one has to worry about their loved one passing away. No one has to worry about so when that worry is alleviated, can you imagine how much
Yeah.
energy that consumes on us? How much
Yeah.
these anxieties of having the food, the health, struggling with health, all those things create in our bodies, and the drain of energy there is on that. Can you imagine that what we can do if we don't have that drain? And so
Yeah.
that's the world I see that can happen in 20 years, and that I'm excited about because I love the interaction with people, but I want an interaction where we can really express our aliveness.
Yes. Wow. Well, I want to invite all of our listeners today. First of all, thank you guys for tuning in. Definitely in the show notes, radfest.com. Is it radfest.org or radfest.com? .com, radfest.com, and again, click the links, go. We've got some special offerings below for you guys, so you're going to want to check that out. And I just want to invite each and every person listening today to just take this moment to consider for yourself, what does aliveness mean to you? And if you had just 10% more, 20% more, 10 times more aliveness, than you currently do, what could that be like for you in your life as you know it? And
Exactly.
if we just start with meeting ourselves where we're at, be willing to dream an even bigger dream, then our dreams can come into reality. But we get to create that map, and that begins by just being willing to ask ourselves some questions. Nothing serious going on here. It's play, it's beautiful. We are co creating an amazing longevity potential forward together. So thanks to everybody for listening, James. Thanks again so much for your time, your
Thank
vision, your passion, your heart. It's been fantastic.
you so much. You're fantastic. And really, I love what you said at the last. This is a joyful adventure. Yeah, we should be having joy all the time with it and all of our moves together.
Yes, completely. All right, everybody. Until next time, continue to don't just think about it, go be about it. Apply what spoke to you in your heart and your soul today as you go out and truly curate your longevity life.